Very good. Welcome to you on this day, October 11, 2022. I'm Andy Johnson. Welcome to the program. We're talking about AM Prime here, around here at WESNCC. Let's tell you what's happening. Before we get to the discussions of the morning, we'll just tell you what's in the papers this morning. We're looking at the Newsday newspaper, and the front page talks about a schoolboy 15 years old who was found chopped and dumped. And he was shot, chopped, and dumped. That is the front page of the Newsday newspaper this morning. Track and field officials in the dark. Administrations lost in the Prime Minister's athlete exchange community. That's on the back page. And in the Tobago Newsday today, trail of damage. Landslides persist and roads damaged after the tropical wave a couple of days ago last week. And on the back page, a positive step for football. More in these publications. We're talking a little bit with Mr. Riyad Mohammed. He's the lead agriculture consultant at the tropical agriculture community. He's talking about the cost of fresh food and flooding, its impact on the situation in Trinidad and Tobago regarding the provision of food and food items. But right now, a couple of days ago, workers who were belonging to the Point-of-Peer branch of Petrotrin staged another march. They were led by Mr. Christopher Jackman. About 24 of them marching around the precincts of the refinery in Point-of-Peer, continuing the call for the refinery to be reopened. Mr. Jackman has agreed to talk with us about that. Good morning, sir. Good to see you.
Hi, pleasant. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, let's talk about it. So this idea that the refinery can be restarted for good, it's not dead, or are you trying to revive it against all hope?
All right, that's a good question. I think right now in the country we have four main challenges. Crime is one that was always here, but apart from crime, we have inflation, we have high food prices, and we have unemployment. And I honestly believe that the refinery, if properly managed and properly run, can contribute to resolving three of those major issues that we currently face: unemployment, high food prices, as well as inflation.
All right, so let's talk about unemployment. What can you say about what is the situation regarding people who were working at the refinery in Point-of-Peer, people who you know from the Point-of-Peer branch of the Oilfields Workers Trade Union? What is the state, as far as you can tell, about how those people have been making out?
All right. There's a lot of persons that would have found employment, and there are also a lot of persons who it will be difficult for them to do so. So, for example, if you look at persons within the operations group, that's a very specific skill set, right? They would have had years' experience working on specific units within the refinery, and it's going to be very difficult for them at this point in time to retool, especially for the persons who would be in their late 40s, early 50s, to retool and find other career paths at this point in time. Now, some of them would have chosen to leave the country to go to other areas that can have and utilize their skill sets.
Like Guyana, for instance?
Guyana is one.
Suriname?
Some would have gone to the Middle East as well.
Okay.
Yes, some would have gone to the Middle East as well. So we as a union, we would have tried as best as possible to link persons to certain institutions where they can't find employment. But again, remember, we're dealing with 4,000 to 5,000 employees here, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge to find employment for each and every one of them. And also, while that is happening, we have an asset sitting down there that can be profitable, that can contribute to Trinidad and Tobago, that can create employment, and we just not focused on getting it restarted, and I can't understand that.
Well, the government's decision was to shut it down. There was no plan to restart it, not so?
No, there was. If you remember, in 2018, 2019, around that time, the government would have acknowledged that the refinery can contribute and that they will be engaging to search and find a buyer to restart the asset. Right? So it's not that they don't believe the asset can make money, but for some reason the process to locate a buyer seems to be taking a ridiculous amount of time. And while we wait, we have $1 billion asset that is wasting away and rotting to the ground.
All right, so
And it's not only the
yeah,
for that.
and your organization's intentions are to get the government to reconsider its position and to restart the refinery by itself on its own, or even with partners?
Well, what we want, and what the workers wanted. Remember, this is we as the Point of Air branch, we have a membership, and the membership will voice their opinion to us. And what they wanted to communicate clearly was that, one, there was an RFP process that was ongoing for some time. I believe the last real update that we heard about that was sometime in June, July, right? And it's just now spinning top in mud to the point where we're hearing that the refinery is no longer a budgetary item for the next fiscal year. So hearing things like this, while persons would have been anxiously awaiting the outcome of the RFP process to hear what the future for the refinery would be, to hear a statement like that is very, very demotivating and demoralizing. And they wanted that put out in the public domain. All right. Also, the refinery as it is, the Prime Minister would have also stated that the asset is not, people seem to not be interested in the asset, but that as well is not true, because to this day, as far as I remember, as far as I'm aware, the Patriotic Energies company is still willing to sit, talk, and put the asset to use.
What is your understanding? Is there a backstory to that? How could it have gone from the situation in which the government itself said that Patriotic made the best bid, and therefore they entered into direct talks with them and so on. And during the course of those talks, the government discovered that the bid was not worthy of being given further consideration. What is your understanding about why that turned out that way?
Well, that whole situation is wrapped around an NDA. But from what was made public and from what was my understanding of the situation is that an offer was originally put on the table for a moratorium with respect to payment. That offer was rescinded for some reason midway down the negotiation, and the union would have already committed towards accepting the moratorium offer that was offered by the government. When that was pulled back, when that was retracted, that is when there would have been the disagreement, and that is where it would have been made apparent, or the government would have attempted to make it apparent, that the union is not able to meet the requirements. But what they're not focusing on is that they would have put an offer on the table up front that was rescinded, for whatever the reason may be. It was rescinded.
And that was never explained. That was never elucidated upon. So it is the government that put it on the table. The unions or the people who were getting into the arrangement bought into it, and then the government changed its mind?
Correct. The government would have changed the terms of the agreement. Again, in Parliament, it was stated that there would have been a moratorium on the payments for purchase. I believe it was 5 years. And when time came to actually sign and get the asset and get the deal, the arrangement going, that is when apparently, because of some situation, an upfront payment was required. From what we conclude, it was because there was a lien, a mortgage on the asset that had to be dealt with. And as a result of that, they could no longer give the moratorium and chose to request that the money be paid up front.
So going into the arrangement, what you're saying there is a common understanding of it is that the government was not up to that point when it put that on the table as a sweetener, probably. I'm not sure if the term is applicable in this case, but that they didn't know that there was a lien on the asset. It appears.
That is what it appears. That is what it will appear like to me. This issue has been negotiated behind NDA. So I can only speak to what was made public to us.
Yeah, and let's talk about that. When an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, what is the importance of that, and how does that apply, and should it apply? Is that normal in the course of doing this kind of business?
Well, I agree with you fully. I think everything should be open and transparent, but that will be a principle, I'm guessing, of the government for negotiating contracts of this level. I believe this was also done for some other large scale investments and projects within this government's term, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems to be one of the tactics that they employ for negotiations.
What do you think is the import of the position that you all took a couple of days ago in continuing to keep this hope alive, to quote Jesse Jackson, with this demonstration, with this march? What do you think will come out of it, or should come out of it?
All right, let me be straightforward here. We know that it's going to be very, very difficult to get anything out of this struggle, right? We know that. But what is important in this day and age is that we voice our opinions and concerns. What we realize now is the society has gotten very toxic, right? The country is very, very divided. But people should never be afraid to speak out on issues that are important to them. And what we found necessary at this point in time is based on the comment that was made by the Prime Minister last weekend about the refinery, right? We needed to put a response out in the public domain to address that comment, to show that the workers are not satisfied with the fact that the RFP process is being ignored, is no longer a budgetary item, and that the refinery seems to be a back burner. We have to remember this is $1 billion asset that is sitting down there. Money is being spent to try and maintain it, but the asset is deteriorating over time, and nobody is being held accountable for that.
So money is being spent as we speak to try and maintain it, you say?
Yeah, they have institutions, they have companies inside there, as far as I'm aware, doing preservation. How effective the preservation is, we don't know. I know the original intent of the preservation was only to be for a 1-year period until the refinery started, right? So it has not been the intent of the preservation to prolong for this long period of time. So we now face the prospect of $1 billion asset that is losing value on a daily basis, and at the end of the day will either have to be scrapped or sold for a peppercorn rate, right? And the refinery as an asset has so much to contribute to Trinidad and Tobago. We believe that this should be a talking point, and we saw it necessary to come out in the public domain and share our perspective, right? It doesn't mean that we don't believe that we can be successful. We will continue. We will push on. We will form alliances. We will pull other persons together who share similar concerns. For example, taxi drivers, fishermen, lake asphalt workers, and citizens who I believe are impacted by the high oil prices as well. This is an issue that affects everyone, and we believe that if the refinery is reopened at this time, there will be a great ease on Trinidad and Tobago.
What do you think is the motor? What is in the motor besides the pestle here?
I don't know. I honestly can't say. I know that the government would have sold a narrative that the refinery was not profitable. I don't agree with that. I'm not saying that the refinery didn't have issues, all right? But I think that to achieve the objective, the narrative was skewed, right? So that the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago could be turned against the refinery workers or the Petrotrin workers. I believe that strongly. What we faced as a challenge with the refinery before was that there was a loan, a very large loan that would have limited the expenditure of the company, and for the company to experience losses over the last probably 3 to 4 years, right? But we have to keep in mind that through freedom of information, it was made clear that no funds, no subventions were paid to Petrotrin by the state over the last 4 years. So Petrotrin as an entity maintained its financial standings even under that level of strain with the debt that they had to repay. That's first and foremost. Second, the refineries around the globe right now are experiencing 300% on average profits, right, with the current high oil price situation. So we have an asset that, if used properly, can generate a significant amount of resources to the country and ease the strain and burden in terms of foreign exchange, right? So I can't understand why it is not a priority at this time to restart it. I don't know if the the government is looking for the perfect option for a buyer. But what I do know is that the statement that there's nobody interested in it is incorrect. But I don't know if it's a political or if it's a situation of them being unwilling to go back to the table with Patriotic to negotiate terms to restart. But I believe this is something that they need to account for.
All right, and you referred to a purported statement by the Prime Minister that the matter was not, as you said earlier, not a budgetary item for the next fiscal year. And you described that as a kind of dagger in the heart of the former workers, because here we are still waiting after 4 years for an update on the status of the RFP for the refinery to be reopened and for people to return to work.
Correct is right. It's a great concern to us because we know the benefit of the refinery, we know what it can do, and we see that it should, the way we see it is that it should be a priority to have this asset restarted. And apparently, clearly it's not.
Hi, do you have any intelligence as to who is behind the lien on the assets?
Well, what I can tell you is that before the refinery was closed, it would have been upgraded, and a significant amount of funds would have been borrowed to facilitate that upgrade process. So the lien is as a result of the mortgage on the asset that would have been put in place when that loan was secured. So they can't sell an asset that is under a mortgage, under a lien. The lien would have had to be dealt with. So what I believe would have happened last year, this would have been after they would have thrown out the arrangement with the union. From what we saw in the papers, in the newspaper, the government would have arranged to transfer the lien now off of the refinery and put the responsibility for that on Heritage. Right? Don't hold me to that, but I know I saw an article in the newspaper about that. So I'm not too sure if the lien is still an issue.
Okay, and so because I was going to ask whether you see this as a kind of sword of Damocles and you want to know, well, who's holding it?
Yeah. No, I think it is. I mean, we all have to be honest here. We know that there was a significant loan that Petrotrin would have been paying back. That would have been hampering the cash flow of the company, and that was used as a excuse for shutting down. But at this point in time, based on the refinery being down and based on transferring the lien to Heritage, the mortgage to Heritage, there shouldn't be an encumbrance on the assets anymore. That is, if the information that was put out in the newspaper was accurate.
All right, and you described the Prime Minister's comments as being quite demeaning and insulting and unacceptable. And those comments have to do with what he's reported as saying that Petrotrin was a loss-making entity costing the state billions of dollars annually. And you say we find it twice as much as the so-called burden caused by the refinery. Yeah,
and I think people need to ask questions now. I believe he would have quoted a figure of about $2 billion a year it would have been costing the country. But what people need to be asking now is how much is it costing the country now to be importing fuel? How much money would we have spent since 2018 to present importing fuel for Trinidad and Tobago to use here and sell? And how much is it costing us now? That is a question that we need to ask. And we have the information. We can put it out, and we will put it out. Right? And it's easy to take a talking point and craft it to your wants and fancies. But I've gone past that. And my focus now is that the refinery as an entity has the potential to benefit Trinidad and Tobago greatly. And leaving it down, leaving it in a condition where it is now, is not beneficial to Trinidad and Tobago. This should be a priority, and the government needs to account to the country as to why this process is taking so long and what is the plans for the asset going forward.
Yeah, and one of the things that I didn't include in what you say, the potential benefit still is, there have been people talking about the former production of bitumen, which is an item that goes into the fixing of roads and so on. So we're not producing that, and we're not doing that.
Correct. In fact, now we have to import it, which costs foreign exchange. And now we're hearing talks about repairing roads with concrete, right? Now, we are now going to expend another set of money to train persons to now know how to go about paving with concrete, right? There's another potential benefit that people forget. The fishermen were heavily reliant on the regular gasoline that was produced by the refinery, right? Now, as a result of that, we're seeing that contributing to higher food prices, right? Every time the fuel price goes up, it contributes to higher food prices. And now we are at the mercy of the tide of the fuel price on the global stage because we no longer have fuel security to be able to produce our own. So we are exposed in more ways than one.
Yeah, and you say the protests will intensify. So there's more to come on this because you want to involve taxi drivers and fisher folk. You say they're reeling from high fuel prices, and you make the point about Lake Asphalt.
Correct, that's right. I go where my membership wants to go, and we discussed, we strategized, and we planned, and that was one of the objectives that they would have put on us going forward. I agree with it strongly, and I intend to go down that road.
All right, Mr. Jackman, thank you very much for talking with us. Christopher Jackman,
Not a problem.
Christopher Jackman, the head of the Point-of-Care branch of the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, talking about the situation surrounding the future, the hopeful future, or the hoped-for future about the Point-of-Care refinery. That's when it comes. Stay with us.
Very first day they opened, my mother and my father and I came in here. I love to see it. It's neat, really, really neat.
You know, we have many sections in Price Club. The food court section is a variety here.
Any one of them you ask, they are very helpful. I love it.
We get low price, specials and everything every day.
Prices are very, very good. It's cheaper than everywhere I've been.
Today I'm excited because we're talking about medicine the Gray's way. Yes, we're talking to Dr. Raquel Supir from Gray's Medical.
Because now I realized, like, the secret, the key. If you give somebody the body they want or the confidence that they're looking for, and you make sure that they know that they have to work really hard to keep it, guess what? They're going to be really healthy.
Tell us a little bit about stretching and the importance of what it is or what it does to your body.
It is really important to stretch your muscles. You can stretch before and after working out. It can limit or reduce your injury, also able to improve your flexibility.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
It's Diwali time again, and that means delicious vegetarian cuisine. Chief has all your herbs and spices for Diwali. Curry, jeera, saffron, garam masala and more for all your talkari. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, ginger and cardamom for those delectable sweets. Brown rice, dal and chana for those tasty delicacies. And of course, Chief baking powder for soft and light roti. This Diwali, remember, the Chief reason is always taste.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best. I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
Welcome back to the discussion here on AM Prime on this day. Up ahead on the program, we will be talking to Mr. Riyad Mohammed. He's described as the lead agriculture consultant for tropical agriculture, the community known as tropical agriculture, about the impact on food prices, on fresh food prices, particularly because of flooding and other issues. We'll get to him in a moment. We're also talking, taking a look around the region in a bit. The Antiguan Prime Minister plans to rebrand Liat and other stories like that. And after the hour, we'll be going into a story on the front pages of the paper. As we speak, the corruption cases collapse, but the DPP says charges could be relayed against Ramlogan and Ramdeen. You know what that is, the corruption charges that were laid against the former Attorney General and one of his associates about making an arrangement with people in the legal system. We'll get to those details when we get to them. But let's take a look now at some of the stories making it around the region. We start with Antigua. As we said, the Prime Minister there plans to rebrand the regional airline Liat. We have a report from ABS Evening News.
The Prime Minister, the Honourable Gaston Brown, has revealed plans to take the Liat brand beyond the region.
We also had an initiative with a Chinese group in which they are about to incorporate a new Liat entity, Liat International, and they are prepared to do international flights, probably China, Frankfurt, Antigua, and also to do some charters within other non-traditional, let's say, South American destinations which Liat does not service.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Brown says he understands why his Grenadian counterpart has expressed the desire to lease an aircraft to ease regional travel woes. Grenada's Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell says his administration is prepared to go that route if Caribbean governments can't sort out the regional transportation sector by year-end. Regional carrier Liat was saved from the brink of liquidation in 2020 by the action of the Gaston Brown administration. This after former majority shareholders Barbados and St. Vincent and the Grenadines voted to liquidate the airline. Since then, regional travel has become very difficult and expensive, and Prime Minister Brown has been leading the fight to keep the airline in the skies and increase airlift in the region. Other regional governments have recently expressed an interest in investing in the regional carrier.
What was decided is that we'll get a study completed. I know that's going to take several more months. But in the interim, if we don't scale up Liat, then he has a point. Because I think we're going to have a very strong tourism season in 2023 within the Caribbean. And we can't have Liat with 3 planes and just sit back. So what we plan to do is that we're going to add about 2 more planes within the next few months. Hopefully we can get them in place for the next season. We're currently negotiating with a potential lessor.
All right, welcome back to the program. With us now, Mr. Riyad Mohammed. He's the lead agriculture consultant at the organization called Tropical Agriculture Community. And he's talking about, in the main, the impact on food prices of flooding and the fresh food cost rise because of that. Good to see you, sir.
Hi, good morning. How are you doing?
Well, good, thanks.
Yes, thank you.
So let's talk about that. It says that customers are paying more for summer fresh fruit produce due to the floods that took place last week in Trinidad and Tobago in various parts of the country. Vendors on Charlotte Street in Port of Spain confirmed to one newspaper that prices went up following the flood. And people were busy selling and so on. But the fact is that there's an impact. And to what extent that is negative on the availability of fresh food, fresh produce, and the cost that people have to pay for it when it's available.
Okay, so yes, that's very true. So what really happened is that the flood last week would have caused some damage to the farmlands and in terms of the crops that were in the reproductive or productive stage, as well as in the pre-reproductive stage. In addition to the floods of last few weeks or last months, even those flash floods would have negative effects on the food supply chains. from the farm to the table. So yes, I agree that the prices would have risen. However, some customers would have looked now towards getting the imported food stuff. But even that now is also a challenge because climate change is not only happening in Trinidad and Tobago, but in various parts of the globe. So yes, that's very true.
So, so where do you see us making out over the next
right? So yeah, right. So in terms of the short term, we have to conserve a bit more. A lot of the food that we consume in Trinidad and Tobago, many is lost in the food value chain, which is on the farm, and many is wasted when it really reaches the customer's home. So we can't focus on food loss and food wastage. We have to really pay attention to how we utilize these items and store these items. But farmers are very resilient. I have not seen major shortages in the market. However, higher prices are seen. All right. So right now, there are flood claims being sent into the Ministry of Agriculture, and we are seeing some commodities still on the market shelves, like the basic tomatoes, melange, okra, pumpkin. It had an instance even last week where pumpkin was even more expensive than watermelon, which was, a record-breaking something in history. You do often see that. Pumpkin is usually very cheap, and what we will find in this time also is that the Diwali celebrations and this period, I am hoping that the Hindu community gets access to the foods that they need within this period.
And you think that will happen, or you feel that there's some?
I do believe, I really do believe that the consumption of meat and meat products or meat-related products will decline to some extent over the next 2 or 3 weeks, and the consumption of these vegetarian products will increase. And when there's obviously the supply and demand and pull, when you have that increase in demand, the supply needs to try to fill that, right? And that's where you might see the increase in price.
I want to ask you, what is your view on the issue that is building now about a coming cost of living crisis, and that it's going to get worse, and we're in for some tough times, not just here, but in various parts of the world. That is the case, and the extent to which the cost of food items would be a contributing factor to that. What do you see?
Right, so I definitely see that in our future. It's not something new. However, I am in this sector a bit long, although I'm a bit young. I'm here about 15 or 16 years now in the commercial sector. And what I've continuously said is that we see the problems now because we are going to experience them now. But these problems did not occur just now. For the last 30 years, I believe that some of these problems have been pre-existing. And, political party after party, government after government, minister after minister would help contribute to a certain segment of the sector. But yet still here we are with so many problems to deal with. Food shortages, food losses, increasing food prices, and you would observe very clearly that the salaries of the consumers are not increasing at the rate of which the food prices are increasing.
All right, you said you're in it a while now and so on, but and looking at you, I'm wondering whether you got into the business at about 15?
16.
Well, look at that.
Very good guess. Very good guess. Yeah.
All right, so I mean, let's talk about going into it a bit. Some of the notes here talk about what was allocated for the agriculture sector in this last budget. Some people consider it to be a snub in the sector. What's your view?
Right. So for the last 3 years, the budget has generally been consistent. This year it's 1.33 billion, of which 300 million is the agriculture stimulus package, right, for agriculture-related activities. But that is not under the Ministry of Agriculture; it's under the Ministry of Finance, right? So we have access to the budget. But if you really look at the budget carefully and the breakdown of the budget, thankfully there are a few support programs for the private sector farmers. But the majority of the budget is spent on the public service, just ensuring that everybody has a salary to take home every month after the hard work, right? So the budget is geared towards supporting the private sector through the proper policies, development, extension services, veterinary services, and seed services.
All right, and it says here that what agriculture get was $1.3 billion, which was the second lowest allocation in a budget, but an increase from $1.2 billion allocated for 2021-2022.
Yeah, I believe the 1.249 was last year, and this year's 1.33. So it's a slight increase. We got a couple million more. And because we have a couple dozen more problems this year. And we have like the invasion of the giant African snail, the continuous red palm mite, the tomato, leaf miner, all of these new pests, all of these extra floods. So we needed a slightly larger budget. I would have been happy if we got more, but I understand the direction of where the government is going, where they would like to support the private sector. However, there's always a little tug as well between the private sector and the public sector, where the private sector say, okay, we don't want no money from you all. It's just that what we would like is proper and efficient service. And the private sector has many issues with the public sector when it comes to efficiency and productivity. So that's the constant tug we have there. And I guess in most ministries as well, not only agriculture.
I want to ask you whether you think so. The government that we had in the period between 2010 and 2015 was a coalition of 5 parties, the major one of them being the UNC, and the UNC's strongholds are in parts of the country that are highly agriculture based. You think that there was a better deal or a better arrangement for the agriculture sector in there, and if not, why not?
A few things were done a bit better, I must say, during that tenure, in the 2010-2015 tenure. However, the problems that exist now, we have some more modern day problems. Pretty larceny has gone totally out of control. Those days we had a proper unit and like I said, giant African emergent. We have much more to deal with now. And then the cost of living ago. So I think it's 2 different situations and 2 different regimes managing 2 different eras. Yeah, I think now we have the modern farming era, and I think the pandemic really switched up things for us, not only here, but in the entire world of the food production sector. So management now and leadership now needs to be a whole new investment in your country, right? And it's not just the typical way of managing maybe pre-pandemic.
Yeah, and you are reported as saying in a discussion on TV about it that the budget was disappointing given its focus on youth in agriculture, but you said it failed to address present issues facing many farmers. Let's talk about your focus on youth in agriculture. What do you think? So you're praising it, but maybe you're saying that the focus was not sort of laser sharp enough, or what is your position there?
Right. So I welcome the youth homestead program. I welcome all of these youth initiatives, and I love to get youth involved because I told my youth that I believe still. I'm under 35.
And you got into it as a youngster, as you said.
Yeah, yeah. So, however, what I want is not only to educate these youths and train them, but to give them enough land to plant crops and livestock and grow food. We have one major issue. When all of these youths are empowered to grow food, and that clashes with the existing farmers on the outside who also grow food, everything goes into the market and a whole lot of food is wasted. All right, and then that carries the price down. So the cost of production for both parties, even the youths and the existing farmers, most people don't monitor their cost of production. Hence, they don't know how much revenues they really get or even profits they generate. So we need to build the export channel and the export platform and export platforms and the proper infrastructure to handle the volume of goods we'd like to produce. So I fully welcome investing in youth in agriculture, and I love that program because I think it's something that we should have done so many years ago. I just want the export part or the back end of that chain to be developed a bit more, to link with ICNTT, InvestTT, and get our locally grown foods out of the country so we could earn that USD.
And you have no sort of misgivings about, no fears about the willingness of young people to get involved if the conditions are right.
Right. So you need to make agriculture, I don't want to say the word sexy, but financially attractive. That's what motivates and incentivizes you. So when you can show them that it's a business that you could make money, but we also need to teach them that there's a lot of risk, biological risk, climatic risk, predial larceny, pests, all of these things we need to educate them on. And these are real things that happen because agriculture is so much biology and it is a living science every day. Once we can show these youth that there are avenues to produce food, producing food is not the hard part. It's getting the food sold is the tougher part, in my opinion. Right? So if we can show them that food could be sold at this price, at this rate, for a certain period of time, which is established contracts, I think they will be much more incentivized than just going to study and then going to sit down home after, or just switch fields after.
Yeah, and how hopeful are you about all the arrangements surrounding greater regionalism about agriculture production, because that is going to be our savior, as people are saying, as we go forward?
I love that question you just asked, and I fully support the CARICOM 25 by 25 reduction food bill. And I think Trinidad and Tobago is aligning itself properly with Guyana and the rest of the CARICOM to try to reduce the food bill with all those collaborations, right? I think this is the first time I've recognized a really big investment in CARICOM and Caribbean agriculture. And we are really hitting a lot more places on the world and headlines on the world. So I think this is the best chance for us to continue producing food and to meet those high criteria and standards. I just don't want Trinidad and Tobago to be left behind.
Why is that a fear? You think that we might be, and what will prevent us from being left behind?
You see, it's a cultural thing. Agriculture is shunned upon so much. You know, it's hard work, it's hot sun, it's manure and feces you have to deal with many times, even in the crop fields, even to fertilize. You know, so it's a cultural thing where we see it as going lower in class. However, a person like myself always loved agriculture, and I always studied it, and then I went into business, and many businesses, and I've had by many big employers, you know, so I enjoyed my stay in the agriculture sector, and I will continue investing in the agri sector. I want youth to experience that thrill and that love and that feeling of making some, you know, some good money and enjoying and exercising and chatting with your colleagues on the field and having that nice outdoor experience.
So what is the nature of your discussions and your discourse with other people who are around the sector, people who may have interest but they don't know how? How do you encourage more people, more young people particularly, to get involved?
Right, so the vessel, the avenue to get involved is really to contact the Ministry of Agriculture. Now, it's really how you contact them, through which channel, that you'll get the best response. I believe an in-person meeting into your county Ministry of Agriculture offices will be the best way to go. Go into the ministry, ask about the incentive programs, the subsidy programs, the grant programs, what is being offered, and thankfully for social media these days, many of these programs are aired. You know, on Facebook or Instagram, sometimes TikTok, I see people will reshare. So information is not hidden anymore. It's more out to the public. So I believe the government at this time wants the public to engage the ministry in charge for these youths and other people interested to get on board.
And you have a sense of confidence that the ministry can, in fact, absorb that kind of interest if the interest, if it turns up, you know, are not.
I really do. Yes, I really do believe so, because I am now part of the agricultural multidisciplinary committee that will advise the minister and his ministry on several activities. Me and a whole team of professionals, experts, people with experience, and businessmen as well. So we have this nice team here giving good advice from the private sector. I'm hoping that it will be taken to cabinet, read out and approved, so that we could change some of the old-time policies and incentives and revamp them with new ones, you know, to invite more solar-powered farms on board, to invest more in regenerative types of agriculture, you know, safer types of things going forward, so that we not only just grow monetary-wise, but planetary-wise and people-wise, the triple bottom line and business model. So that's the model I use to engage most parties.
Yeah, and you know, the way in which the industry is moving towards sort of 21st century operations, aquaponics, and the rest of the things that you'll talk about, to what extent you feel comfortable that the right set of activities and the right focus will be there to accompany this attempt at sort of inspiring new interest, particularly among young people.
So I believe totally in the public-private sector partnerships, which is a joint venture between the private sector and the public sector, where the public sector will give something, for example, land, and the private sector will invest a couple million and start these modern projects. And I believe in those projects going forward. That way we will have so much more efficiency on these farms, because it is privately run, but we also get the support from the from the public or governmental sector. That's what I believe going forward. In addition to, I also see the attraction that youths have towards technology and digitization. So I am seeing more and more programs being launched as the months go by into this area. So I am seeing youths now happier than they were a few years ago. Yeah.
All right. Dara Rampersad, President of the Agricultural Society of Trinidad and Tobago, thank you very much for talking with us. All right, we will take a break. More to come. Stay with us.
Diwali is in the air again, and Royal Castle reminds you to try its yummy veggie burger. The Royal Castle veggie burger is great on its own or in a combo with a side and a 16-ounce drink. And it's healthy too. A nutritious patty made with oats, lentils, chana, potatoes, and carrot. Inside a soft bun with tomatoes and lettuce. So for this season, try the Castle's tasty and healthy veggie burger. Shubh Diwali from Royal Castle.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce, the mega laugh festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Sun, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
The best laptops and tablets are at dbesttoys.com. Get a Gateway 14.1-inch Ultra Slim notebook or an HP 14-inch laptop at the best prices in TNT. Get the Fire 7 tablet for $474. You can also shop the latest Amazon Fire Sticks. Call now at 32-DBEST to order or visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at dbesttoys.com. Free delivery available throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Cash or links on delivery.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andre.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back. As we head up to the news at the top of this hour, let's just tell you this. The St. Lucia Department of Labour has teamed up with a UK recruitment firm to fill employment vacancies in the Channel Islands in the UK. We have a report from TV in St. Lucia.
The Department of Labour's attempts at exploring new avenues to create more employment opportunities for St. Lucians have borne fruit. The government of St. Lucia has partnered with GR8 Recruitment Employment Services and Training in Jersey, United Kingdom, to find work for St. Lucians here at home overseas. Employment Officer in the Department of Labour, Nadia Pierre-Louis, details the origins of this partnership.
The department, through communication with the Deputy Labour Commissioner, Mr. Joseph, had a meeting with Mr. Lee Madden, who is responsible or the director of GR8 Recruiting Agency. They wanted to offer St. Lucians job opportunities in construction and hospitality. And this initiative seems like an ideal one to St. Lucia.
Jersey is the largest of the Channel Islands in the United Kingdom, lying south of England's coast. Managing Director GR8 Recruitment Lee Madden says recruits will fill a number of jobs in the Channel Islands.
We are very aware that we are going to need more staff, and to get an eclectic and diverse mix of nationalities, I've decided to look at the Caribbean and predominantly St. Lucia to look at a recruitment solution as well. So we're here to offer opportunities for people to come and work in the Channel Islands and the other islands throughout the UK for construction workers and hospitality workers. GRA is a business that supports people that are going to come and work in the islands. So working with the Labour Department, we will be taking applications through the Labour Department and offering opportunities for 6- and 9-month contracts.
Madden says St. Lucia was the preferred choice because of its English-speaking population, familiarity with British law, and glowing hospitality sector reviews.
5-star service to the hospitality sector. So I see St. Lucia as probably a jewel in the crown of the Caribbean, where I can come and find some amazing talent to come and work in the islands and support our industries. In relation to the construction sector, having done a lot of research and now having met a number of construction workers here in the island, I'm very, very confident the skill set is here where they can support our industries, where we've got over £1 billion worth of infrastructure that we are building.
It should be noted that the Canada Seasonal Farm Workers Program recently suffered a setback with allegations of mistreatment of St. Lucian workers on a strawberry field. Madden says his company has a zero tolerance of such behaviour.
Historic evidence of the fact that we've employed over 250 people already into the Channel Islands and we've not had one issue.
The company in the first instance will look to recruit about 70 to 80 construction workers and 50 to 100 hospitality workers. However, Madden notes the potential for expansive growth in other sectors.
We set up programs where our education departments have been working in Kenya and Rwanda, and maybe we can do the same there. We can do exchange with students. I think there's lots of opportunities that two islands with very similar demographics, similar sort of size, can learn from each other and complement each other as well.
GR8 Recruitment will provide successful recruits with full-time contracts, including assistance with work permit applications, visas, and the cost of travel and accommodations.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise St. Clair. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Scrap iron dealers protest outside home of Works and Transport Minister. Representative files nomination papers on behalf of Dr. Keith Rowley. MP Amin calls on the government to immediately provide support for communities affected by flooding. And internationally, China's economy suffers another blow. Now for the details. The Scrap Iron Dealers Association on Monday morning protested outside the home of Works and Transport Minister Ruhan Sinanan. President of the association, Alan Ferguson, said his membership is embarking on a new tactic in an effort to get the attention of members of the cabinet of the plight they face as a result of the shutdown of their industry. The move comes 2 months after the government imposed a 6-month ban on the export of scrap and old metals outside of Trinidad and Tobago.
Ruhan Sinanan, before election, it was so much of contractors that PNM government was accusing of being corrupted and stealing a lot of real taxpayers' money. And he did try, I see he working with the same contractors now. So what we're saying, they accuse people who is not scrap iron dealers are stealing copper and all different things. So we say we come to Rohan Sinanan to get his help because he seems to be the one to able to help people who probably the accused are doing wrong, accused are doing wrong. So we say we come here because the information coming to us is Rohan Sinanan is the one who lobbied the cabinet to close down our industry.
Ferguson calls for the reopening of the industry as he threatened to do the same at other ministers' residences.
And I am saying enough is enough. Open up the industry because I am saying it clear today. Each and one of your ministers, we going by them because all they don't want us to block the road. We have the Constitution of Trinidad and Tobago, Section 3. We telling we could PSC protest, and we going by all the ministers because you're living in a luxury house. You're eating lamb, jam and thing, and you're telling me to eat in cold pot.
PNM political leader Dr. Keith Rowley will be contesting his position at the upcoming internal elections. The Prime Minister's nomination papers were filed by his representative as he had parliamentary commitments at the time.
My name is Robert Cesar. I'm the chairman of the Digo Martin West constituency. We would have just filed Dr. Rowley's nomination papers. We are acting as his agents this morning because he has to attend Parliament. So that exercise has been completed. The receipt is there for you to see. So onwards to the election now.
St. Augustine MP Khadija Amin is calling on government to immediately provide emergency social support and urgent cleanup relief for communities affected by flooding. As it is clear, she says, the government's lack of foresight and proper planning has left tens of thousands literally in the cold. The UNC's Shadow Rural Development and Local Government Minister expressed these urgent calls as she continued visiting constituents affected by recent flood together with councillors of the St. Augustine constituency. MP Amin said it appears the government is doing below the bare minimum to get citizens' lives back in order and that numerous government agencies are without leadership in this crisis. On to international news now. Holiday spending during China's Golden Week has plunged to its lowest level in 7 years as broad COVID curbs discouraged people from traveling or spending, while a darkening economic outlook continues to erode consumer confidence. Tourist spending for the week-long holiday that started on October 1st declined 26%. That's the lowest figure since 2014 and less than half of the pre-pandemic level in 2019, according to government statistics from previous years. The National Day break is one of China's longest public holidays and usually a peak season for travel and spending. Well, that was News to the Hour on WESN. I am Denise Sinclair. Thanks for watching.
Saturday, November 5th, Shore Park, Tobago. It's Million Laughs Caribbean Comedy Commerce. The Mega Laugh Festival to end the Tobago Carnival season, featuring Tobago's finest in folklore and musical entertainment, together with some of the Caribbean's top comedians, Larry Joseph, Daryl the Saint Mendoza, Dolores, Alan the Entertainer, Handsome Son, Mako Media, and more. Get your ticket specials available on Island E-Tickets and various outlets nationwide, or visit the Million Laughs handles for more info. It's Comedy Commerce in Tobago, a wee kind of commerce.
Welcome back to the program. Well, this is front page news on the papers on this day. One newspaper, the headline is Corruption Cases Collapse. The other one, Corruption Case Against Ram Logan and Ramdeen Collapse. A subhead on one of the papers. The DPP says the charges could be relayed against Ram Logan and Ramdeen. That has to do with the corruption case involving the former Attorney General Anand Ram Logan and his associate General Ramdeen. I'll tell you what that is about. It was a big issue then that they had conspired to cause criminal activity in the conduct of state business. And the Attorney General now is saying that he is stunned and surprised as to what has happened, because someone who had agreed to participate in this as a witness for the prosecution, as they say, because he was involved in the arrangements of getting bribes under the previous administration. He had come to court on some occasions. It was said that he was suffering from a critical illness at that time, more than 2 years ago. He has now decided that he wants to be indemnified of a fine of $2.25 million if he is to agree to go ahead and operate as a friend of the state in getting to this matter against Ramlogan and Ramdeen. To help us understand what has happened here and how it led to that, our friend who understands these things better even than many lawyers, my contention is Ravi Balgobin Maharaj. Good to see you.
Hi, Andy. Thanks for having me, and thanks again for all your kind words there.
All right, so let's talk about this. The matter, let's say what it was, so that Mr. Nelson, who is the Queen's Counsel, had agreed to be a witness for the prosecution in these allegations of corruption involving the former Attorney General Anand Ramlogan and his associate General Ramdeen. He's changed his mind now and saying that in order for him to do that, he wants to be indemnified. So he wasn't going to go to prison because of what was found. He agreed to that. But that he had to pay a fine of $2.25 million for his participation in this taking bribes allegation from Ramlogan in particular. Now he wants to be indemnified. He doesn't want to have to pay that. Otherwise, he won't testify. Let's start with that.
Well, you have to look at the source, and you have to look at the genesis of where all of these things came out from. And the thing about it, back in 2018, 2019, then Attorney General Faris Al-Rawi was looking to build a case against Mr. Anand Ramlogan, former Attorney General, and Mr. Gerald Ramdeen. Both of these individuals were involved and still are involved in a lot of high-profile cases against the state. And, well, it was against Mr. Al-Rawi at that time. Now, Mr. Reginald Moore has taken over the reins of the Attorney General's office because of Mr. Al-Rawi's incompetence. Unfortunately, that incompetence has haunted him and has now followed him into the position, because we're seeing now where a plea deal, which
it is your considered opinion that Mr. Al-Rawi, as an Attorney General, was incompetent.
He was entirely incompetent, wholly incompetent, and the fact that he was removed from the office and demoted within the cabinet is a testimony to his incompetence. Right? He would have still had the position there had he been a competent Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs. The fact that he isn't there speaks to that incompetence. The thing about it, Mr. Al-Rawi orchestrated the entire plea deal with Mr. Vincent Nelson, King's Counsel. And the interesting thing about it is that when it was first formed and created, the Director of Public Prosecution and his entire office were kept out of the loop. They were only made aware that a plea bargain arrangement was in place when they entered the courtroom, and the court had to rule on the matter, and it was kept out of the public domain. So up to this day, we are not sure entirely what was stipulated within that plea arrangement, and we don't know what are the terms and agreements that were formed.
All right, so let me ask you this then, so that some things, probably more than we thought, had gone wrong from in the morning, because the Director of Public Prosecutions was not involved in the arrangements by which this indemnity had been struck, and there was an issue about that to begin with, right?
Absolutely, and the thing about it is that Mr. Vincent Nelson was facing his own charges at that point in time. And when you look at the way plea deals are structured, not only in Trinidad and Tobago, but all around the world, it is structured in a way where you would have persons who may be guilty of a crime looking to lessen their sentence and looking to lessen the fines that are imposed upon them, and therefore trying to weasel their way out of paying for the crimes that they themselves may have committed. And that may very well be the case where Mr. Vincent Nelson offered up information on a former Attorney General, knowing the political climate and knowing that the PNM was in power and were looking for information on any former People's Partnership ministers, found a way to entice them with this information and say, look, if you release me from these charges, if I don't have to face any jail time, and now he's changing the agreement again and saying he doesn't want to pay any fines, but he's looking to indemnify himself from any wrongdoing and offering this pie-in-the-sky information on Mr. Ram Logan and Mr. Ramdeen, something that he has not yet provided 2 years after the case against him was ruled upon. And really and truly, the government appeared to have just been purchasing cat and bag, as they say, right? They didn't know what he had, and they still don't know what he has. And because of that, the case hasn't been able to move forward, and now the DPP has dropped the charges against him. And really and truly, again, it all boils down to incompetence and this drive, this commitment to try to catch any UNC or People's Partnership minister in any sort of wrongdoing. The government has consistently said, they are involved in corruption, they do this, they do that. They haven't been able to prove a single thing against a single charge that has been made. Emailgate is still fresh in the minds of the citizens of this country. And again, all they're doing is trying to deflect blame and throw allegations against their political opponents. Not one of them has any veracity to it. And because of that, they fail time and time again to prove any of these things in court.
All right, so let's take some things one at a time here, some fundamentals, some basics here. So the Director of Public Prosecutions was left out of these arrangements all entirely. Should he have been?
Absolutely.
Should he have been on the ground floor when these discussions were taking place about getting Mr. Nelson to cooperate and come as a state witness and admit that he took bribes for whatever reason?
Absolutely. And the fact that there was a matter against Mr. Nelson in the court at the time that the plea arrangement was created and was made is even more damning towards Mr. Arawi, because that would mean that he was collaborating with someone who was under criminal prosecution at the time, to concoct this plea arrangement outside of the offices of the Director of Public Prosecution. I don't know that such a thing has ever taken place in any court or any judicial system anywhere else in the world outside of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, the DPP is responsible for all prosecutions and all matters of the state in terms of prosecutions. If you have an individual in the courtroom, right, defending these matters, as an Attorney General, there must be a separation of powers. He can't just go to that person and say, look, we will offer you a deal as an Attorney General and as a government, and not involve or not even tell, and not even inform the Director of Public Prosecution on the matter.
So to what extent...
that they themselves were blindsided, it tells you the kind of deals and the kind of conditions that were involved in this matter.
Right. So to what extent, if the matter had proceeded to court, to what extent the fact that the DPP had been left out of it would have become an issue when the matter was under consideration then in the court, when it became active in the court? To what extent the fact that the DPP was not involved in the arrangements by which Mr. Nelson came in as this major state witness would have been a contentious issue?
Well, I'll tell you, if the DPP had been involved, and again, we don't know the specifics of the arrangement as it stands today, but had the DPP been involved from the beginning, they would have included certain stipulations with regard to a time frame, with regard to the type of information Mr. Nelson would have to provide, and it wouldn't have taken 2 years after the case against Mr. Nelson had concluded for them to still be deciding on the terms and conditions of the plea arrangement. And that's what's happening. The plea bargain arrangement was signed, I think, in 2019. But here we are in 2022, where Mr. Nelson is still negotiating terms of that same arrangement. And he's saying that in addition to indemnity from any time served in prison for the crimes which he was convicted, he's now looking to waive the fines that were attached to that ruling as well. So the thing about it, again, the way that the plea arrangement was structured and is based is completely unheard of in the Commonwealth. And had the DPP's office been involved in crafting the document, I can assure you it would not have been structured in that way, and probably it wouldn't have been structured at all, understanding that 2 years after, Mr. Nelson still hasn't provided any information, and there's very serious doubt whether there is any information to be provided.
Okay. Is he liable to be cited for any kind of wrongdoing in the matter of changing his mind, reneging on an arrangement that he made? Is there anything in the law that can bring him to court for that by itself?
Well, the thing about it, again, and it goes back to the fact that we don't know exactly what is contained within the plea arrangement. So we don't know what conditions they set out for him in order for him to provide this information to the state for any prosecution to take place. The fact that there's a matter before the courts, though, currently regarding the waiving of the fines that Mr. Nelson incurred, shows that there weren't any strict guidelines or strict rules set out in that arrangement to compel him to offer up that information or to provide that information. I'll tell you, I think it was 2020, the DPP were looking to send 2 officers to the UK to get the information from Mr. Nelson, because he had, again, and the thing about it, he was allowed to leave the country and enter into another state while still under this arrangement and still not providing the information to the state. You know, so we had to take resources and take police officers in the UK to try to get this information. They went and they still didn't receive it. So the thing about it, all of this is adding to the confusion and adding to the suspicion of what really was the conditions of the plea arrangement, and how is it that something like this can actually exist in the current judicial system.
Yeah, we have 2 things here. One is that the DPP is saying that the state has gathered all of its evidence in this case, and this case depends to a very, very large extent on the evidence of one Vincent Nelson. And he's informed that Mr. Nelson, through his attorneys, he's arguing that he's seeking to have the High Court award him millions of dollars in damages for breach of an indemnity agreement by the government that was signed between him and the then Attorney General. So there was an indemnity agreement signed that has been breached, and he wants to be paid for that on top of, is it correct, on top of the money that he was paid, this $2.2 million in the first place, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, and the matter that he's arguing is that he's saying that the original plea agreement should have indemnified them from the fees and from the fees attached to the ruling that was handed down against him. And he's saying all of that should have been covered by the plea agreement. The thing about it, again, because we don't know, we haven't seen it, and because the DPP wasn't involved, we don't know how the thing was structured, how it was worded, and we don't know whether or not it should have. Maybe it should have. But again, it goes back to the incompetence of Mr. Arawi, who took this undertaking on his own to craft this document, and whether or not he put in proper guidelines, proper instructions, and whether or not these instructions were followed. Again, it's up to the courts to decide that based on their reading and understanding of the document, but that's something that we will never have to understand what went on in this matter.
It's as though, from one angle, the DPP is participating in it because he has to, given his professional responsibilities at this point. But you could see somebody saying, well, he may be thinking, well, only look for that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that is the reason probably why the charges were dropped against Mr. Ramlogan and Ramdeen, and the government wasn't informed in the same way he wasn't informed when the plea agreement was first created. You know, I have no doubt that, you know, he decided, you know, because this falls within his jurisdiction and his purview, he was going to handle the matter in the best way that he saw fit. And the DPP, as an independent official, an office has the ability to do that. And really and truly, I don't think that had this matter gone to him from the very beginning, it would have ended up in the way that it did. The only person who remains culpable today for any wrongdoing remains Mr. Vincent Nelson. And the PNM government has moved mountains and has done everything within their power to make sure that he remains indemnified and make sure that he doesn't receive any punishment for these things that he has done. But yet they remain determined to try to prosecute Mr. Ramdeen and Mr. Ram Logan based on information that they themselves do not have to this day. So it shows where the government's priorities lies, and it shows exactly what they are willing to do just to prosecute their political opponents for some political mileage.
All right, and this is the current Attorney General expressing to the extent to which he's stunned and surprised at these latest developments. Part of what he's saying here is that Mr. Nelson has not to date recanted any admission of wrongdoing he made in the criminal proceedings. So that stands. He's not saying I'm innocent. He's saying that I had a deal and that deal is being breached, and I'm not going to come forward on the agreement that I made because this deal was breached. That is my sort of summation of translation of what Mr. Nelson seems to have said, right? That is correct?
Right, but Mr. Nelson can't claim any innocence. He was found guilty by the court. The reason that there's this fine in place today is because the court ruled on the matter and found that he was guilty of wrongdoing. And again, it goes back to the fact that the government is willing to bend backwards to make sure that a man that was found guilty by the court walks free and has no fines to pay. But it's all based on the promise that he will provide information on these other two individuals that they did something wrong in the government. You know, so you're saying that crime, you want to prosecute crime, but you don't want to prosecute an actual criminal. You want to prosecute someone that criminal may or may not have information on, something that he has not provided, and there's no evidence that it actually exists.
Again, I wanted to refer to Mr. Amor's senior counsel, Attorney General in the matter. He's saying, having obtained a fuller account of the director's decision to discontinue these criminal proceedings, I will be taking the advice of eminent local and foreign senior and King's Counsel to ensure that no stone is left unturned in the pursuit of justice for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. To what extent that has wings, and can it fly or will it not fly?
Well, in terms of getting King's Counsel and in terms of making sure justice prevails, again, it goes back to the fact that Mr. Vincent Nelson, King's Counsel now, not Queen's Counsel, was convicted of a crime. Is the Attorney General therefore willing to prosecute, well, not prosecute, but to enforce the ruling and the judgment that was handed out by the court against this convicted criminal? If he isn't, then it shows that the hypocrisy of the entire matter, and it shows that the PNM is willing to do anything to prosecute the UNC, but no one else. And that's the reason that crime is so prevalent today. And I'll tell you, it comes back to, and you would remember last year, there was the whistleblower legislation that would have passed through the parliament. And that legislation was structured in a way and worded in a way, again, that the PNM is looking for persons to come forward, anyone to come forward with information that they may use, whether frivolous or whether proper, that they can use just to prosecute and just to come out in public and throw accusations against the UNC and against their political opponents. But really and truly, none of these matters hold any water and hold any weight when it enters a courtroom. So they're just looking to play political games, and they're using the judicial system and they're using the courtrooms to do it. The thing about it, and again, all of this adds up to the bill footed by the Attorney General's office, the over $1 billion we think they would have spent it in the Attorney General's office under the PNM. And what are the people and the citizens of this country benefiting from that amount of money being spent? We aren't seeing any benefits. Criminals are allowed to walk out of the country, not just walk free, but criminals are allowed to walk out of the country and go to other countries and not even comply with the agreements of their release. So the PNM have shown time and time again that they are not committed to upholding the law and to prosecuting actual criminals in this country. And all they are focused on is attacking the UNC, blaming Kamala, blaming Anand, blaming everybody else. They don't do anything wrong, right? And they want to prosecute and they want to look for corruption. I want to tell the Prime Minister and the Cabinet, if you want to look for corruption, look no further than this very matter involving Vince Nelson and Faris Arawi. And if you want someone to prosecute Faris Arawi for his hand and his role in creating this document. That,
because we have less than a minute available, but I was going to ask you just that. Where do you think professionally, constitutionally, legally is Faris Arawi as we speak on this matter? Where is he?
Well, I'll tell you, politically, I think this may be his last term in office. I don't see a political future for Mr. Arawi. Professionally, I think no one will ever hire him as a lawyer in private practice, given his track record. He never won a case for the state or for anyone else, for that matter. And in terms of his reputation, I think that there's a case to be made for him to face criminal prosecution for his role in this matter, but it will take another government to step in and to really investigate it properly.
Thank you very much, sir. Ravi Bagwe Maharaj.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right, well, that's our broadcast on this edition of the program. We thank our guests. We thank you for watching. I'm Andrew Johnson saying we'll see you next time. But of course, in half an hour's time, the guys will come in for today's edition of Talking Point. We have news at the top of the hour before we get to that. See you tomorrow.
WESN